Good morning. Happy Wednesday. Thank you to everybody who is joining or watching after the fact. We are here for our fourth Career Ed Talks of this season. I will go ahead and share my screen to give you a little overview. We started Career Ed Talks last year. My name is Kelly Thawley. I'm a career specialist in our Career and Tech Ed department here at the School District of Lee County. Last year, we focused on the individual career clusters. This year, we're focusing more on the employability skills that students and employees will need in their future workforce. So this season, we had professionalism and ethics, etiquette and attire, communication 101, and today's topic is teams and diversity and how those are connected and why both of those items are important in the workplace. Next month is self-management and confidence, and then we wrap it up in May with resumes and interviews. And as always, you can find any of these recordings on our YouTube channel. Down here is the link, bit.ly/Lee Career Ed Talks. And when you get there, this is what you should see. So you can find all of the video library and you can search, or they are organized into playlists. So you can find the different seasons and then additional CTE information there. So today we are excited, like I said, to talk about teams and diversity. We have a really great panel. The definition of diversity is the practice or quality of including or involving people from a range of different social and ethnic backgrounds and of different genders, sexual orientations, etc. The definition of teamwork is a combined action of a group of people, especially when effective and efficient. So looking at some data, businesses with more diverse leadership teams report 19% more innovation revenue. According to Gartner, which is located here locally, 75% of companies with diverse frontline decision-making units will exceed their financial goals. The same study reveals that employee performance is 12% higher in a diverse organization than it is in companies that have no inclusivity efforts. So it does improve employee engagement and also helps the business with their bottom line, which is making more money. So today we are joined by, like I said, a really amazing panel. We have Meghan Daley with Lee Health. She is the HR Workforce Development Specialist. We also have Crystal Torres-Nunez, who is with our School District of Lee County. She is a coach in the Diversity and Inclusion Department. Tessa LeSage is the director of the FutureMakers Coalition, and that is part of the Collaboratory here in Fort Myers. And then we also have Neal Mantick. He is the founding manager of Mantick Life Sciences Consulting Group. So thank you so much, my teammates, Brandy and Gina, thank you for being on here. And we will go ahead and get started. So the first question is, I'm going to ask each of you, is just to give us a little bit of background. So what did you study? Where did you study? And what degrees and certifications do you have? So we'll focus on the educational background. How did you get to where you are now? So let's start with Crystal.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the warm welcome, Kelly. Again, my name is Crystal Torres-Nunez. I am the Diversity and Inclusion Coach for Lee County School District. I have currently been with the school district for 19 years. My certifications and degrees, I have a bachelor's and master's degree from Hodges University. My bachelor's degree is actually in interdisciplinary studies, which is similar to a liberal arts degree. And then my first master's degree is in with the specialization in education. And I actually just completed my second master's in educational leadership. So I am now going to pursue administrative roles. Thank you, ladies. So my certifications vary. I'm actually certified currently. I have my FELE. I also have a certification in K through 12 ESOL, a certification in K through 12 ESE, and also elementary education K through 6 currently. I've had various roles with the district from pre-K through adult education as an educator, and those are my background. Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal. And congratulations again on that second master's. Megan, we'll come over to you.
And I will apologize ahead of time. I'm getting over a cold. I'm Meghan Daley. I'm the Workforce Development Specialist for Lee Health. I have a bachelor's degree from Hofstra University in communications with a concentration in public relations.
Thank you. Tessa.
Good morning, everyone. I love to hear all these education achievements and certifications, because FutureMakers is a strong believer in lifelong learning and continuing your education. As the world and the economy changes, we all have to continue to learn things and earn the credentials that are needed to stay relevant and be able to do our jobs. My background, I have a bachelor's degree from Boston College. I was a double major in psychology and philosophy. I have a master's degree from Florida Gulf Coast University in public administration. And I'm also a lead AP, which is leadership and energy and environmental design, with a focus on building construction. I have a very strange eclectic background. And then I also have a certificate in diversity, equity, inclusion from USF.
Awesome. Thank you, Tessa. And Neal.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Neal Mantick. Currently, I have my own consulting practice working in the pharmaceutical industry, doing clinical research, working with drug companies, as well as patient organizations in the rare disease space. I started my career, I have a bachelor's degree in pharmacy from the University of Kentucky. And then about 10 years later, I went back to school to get a master's. At that time, I was living in Boston and have a master's in health policy from the Harvard University School of Public Health. And again, my career has been spent I've never worked as a pharmacist in hospitals or CVS. I've always been in drug research, working with companies and patient organizations.
Thank you, Neal. Very diverse background among our panel. So this will be awesome. We're excited to hear from each of you and to have you share your expertise. So thank you, panelists, for being here. What made you choose your career? So we've already covered the educational backgrounds. So now kind of a little more personally, why are you in the field that you're in? And maybe even tie in how that correlates with our topic today, which is teams and diversity. So we'll go backwards this time. Let's go to Neal.
Sure. I wish I had a very classy answer to that. I have the hindsight of looking backwards and being able to develop an answer. I guess pharmacy was just familiar. My father worked for a wholesale drug company as a sales rep, and he would take my older brother and me along with him on his trips, going to different pharmacies, getting their orders to restock their shelves and so forth. My older brother went to pharmacy school and he lived at home. So very often I would help him study for his exams as he was trying to memorize antibiotic names and dosages and so forth. When it came time for me to graduate and decide what to do, maybe like a lot of folks, I had no idea what I wanted to do when I grew up. And at that time, pharmacy was familiar, number one. Healthcare seemed to be a place where there's a lot of branches, there's a lot of opportunity, a lot of places I could go with a pharmacy degree. So with that, my biggest thing was I wanted to live away from home. So rather than staying at home in Pittsburgh, where my brother went to college, I went to the University of Kentucky to study pharmacy. So again, it was sort of, it felt familiar. It felt like a good first step. And I had no idea what the second, third, or fourth step would be at that time.
Good answer. I didn't know you were from Pittsburgh. That's where my dad's family is from too. So awesome. Let's go to Tessa. Oh, you're on mute.
Mute. Did you read my lips? I said unmute after I said, okay. All right. So repeat the question so I don't ramble too much.
Yeah, what made you choose your career? So we went over the educational background. So now maybe some more personal.
Okay. So I have always been very justice oriented and focused on making a difference. And I don't just mean like making a difference in a person's life, but like I've wanted to change the world. And so it seems like any job I've ever gotten into, and I've worked in every sector, I've worked in nonprofit, private sector, government, and now philanthropy. No matter where I go, I wind up creating my own pathway because I like to disrupt systems. So literally from the very beginning, I was messing things up for organizations by saying, hey, why do we do things this way? This isn't right. We need to fix this. We're not serving the people that we need to serve. So I've been really lucky to have the opportunity to kind of push the needle in the places that I've worked. I've worked in mental health. I've worked in land use planning and zoning. I've worked in government in the county manager's office as a sustainability manager. And now I work at a community foundation where all I do every day is help teams of people work together around a shared goal. And these teams are across organizations, across county boundaries. We work in 5 counties, all working to try to increase the number of people that have the credentials that are needed to fill in-demand jobs here in Southwest Florida. Every person on this call this morning is part of that work, and I'm really proud of that. But so for me, I would say, how did I choose my career? I've really made moves that have allowed me to sort of fulfill that personal goal of making the community that I was raised in a better place. So I'm a product of the Lee County School District myself. And I came back here, and now my kids are in the school district, and I want to see this place be the best it can be. And so I use teamwork and inclusion as much as I can to make sure that we're achieving that wherever I am.
Awesome. Thanks, Tessa. And you do great work for our community. So thank you. Meghan, what got you into your career?
Well, much like Neal, I didn't know what I wanted to do once I had graduated college, but I knew that I wanted to work in some nonprofit industry. I love interacting with people. I love helping people. I like making a difference, much like Tessa. I would love to save the world. I can't do it though. But when I moved down here, I saw that Lee Health was everywhere. I had never worked in healthcare prior, excuse me. But once I got involved with Lee Health, one of the things that attracted me to stay with Lee Health is their involvement in inclusion and diversity. One of the business partners had asked me to participate or support the Project Search program, which is for students with disabilities in Lee County. And we bring them right on site. And I think that just drew me right in. I love being able to say that I work for an industry that does support that type of inclusion on all levels. And it's just been my passion since I've been here. And the workforce development portion, which is, I had worked in HR prior in recruitment, but workforce development was new to me. But to Tessa's point, working with such fantastic people to accomplish such amazing goals, it really has driven me to appreciate my field and appreciate the community down in Florida and Lee County. It's just such an amazing, it's such an amazing collaboration between so many different diverse groups. And I think it's fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you, Meghan. And then Crystal, kind of your personal story, how you ended up where you are.
Well, as such like Tessa, I'm a product of Lee County School District. I've known since I was in middle school that I wanted to be an educator, more specifically an ESE teacher or an educator that supported students with disabilities. And that was because of my upbringing. More than anything, my sister is visually impaired, and I just saw the challenges that my mom faced in her educational pursuit with the district, and her having to advocate and not necessarily have someone on that side all the time. So I've always wanted to be an advocate for those that could not advocate for themselves. So I knew in middle school that I wanted to go into education. So transitioning on, it was more other educators that I looked up to that gave me the confidence to actually go into education. I've had amazing educators throughout my educational career with the district that taught me that I had confidence and value within myself. So seeing that, I've always wanted to instill that in other students or children and even adults around me, is just validating and celebrating them and giving them that confidence to say, you have the worth, you have the value to pursue and do whatever you want to do in life. So that's kind of what drove me into education. I've always wanted to be an educator, and I'm a natural educator, I believe, on some level. So that's my response.
Thank you, Crystal. And it's interesting to hear, even though you're all in different fields, you can tell that you're all very passionate about what you do and about making it equal and accessible and across the board, just making the world a better place. So I thank each of you for what you do. And to Tessa's point, she likes to challenge the systems. And for some of our students out there, maybe that's the personality type that you have. I tell my coworkers all the time that I also ask forgiveness instead of permission. So if you are someone who does like to maybe be a little bit of a troublemaker and ask questions, use your powers for good and do it in the right way and push that needle in the direction that it needs to go. We're going to move on to the next question, which is describing your employability skill and kind of how that affects you and your job and what role you play within your career to move further, whatever your goal is, what our goal is within FutureMakers as well. So can you just kind of describe and tell a little bit about what inclusion and equity and diversity and working in teams, what does that mean to you? So I will go to Tessa first.
We don't have enough time to discuss everything that means to me. So first of all, I have a unique skill set, and that is the ability to work at a systems level, to see systems, to see how things are interconnected, and then to help or support people that are within those different parts of the system in coming together, because the reason why a lot of our social problems and economic and environmental problems exist today is because everything sort of operates in a silo, and no single problem can be solved that's a large community scale problem by one organization or one entity. And so I believe that the future of work will involve a lot of collaboration. And so the ability to collaborate and work together with people is critically important. You can be a collaborator and you can be the facilitator of collaboration. And I'm more the facilitator of collaboration. It's a skill that I've honed over the years. I don't have a credential in it, but I practice a collective impact model. I'm well trained in the Sustainable Development Goals, which is really the systems across the globe and across our communities. And I'm also a practitioner of the stakeholder engagement process to help bring people together to solve the problems that they want to solve. The reality is, what my job is to help people learn to trust each other enough to be able to work with each other, no matter what it is that they're working on. So I care less about what we do and more about how we do it. So the process that we use to work together is really the product of my work. The key to this, though, if you want to collaborate and you're doing it to make a big impact, whether that's to make money or to solve problems, is that you have to have a diverse group of people around the table. All of us experience systems. So like right now in school, you're experiencing the education system that we live in. All of us experience systems, but a lot of times only some of us are making the decisions about how those systems function. And that's the other huge problem that we have across, our communities around the world, is the decision makers don't always represent the people that experience the system. And so when it comes to sales, like Kelly was saying earlier with some of the statistics that she was providing, you can't have as high as sales if you only have one group of people, one type of person represented at the table making decisions about sales. When it comes to solving problems, you can't make decisions about solving problems without the people, without representation of everyone in the system at the table to come up with the solutions. So we have to really move from doing things to or for people to doing things with people, no matter what the topic is that we're focused on. So, that's really my short answer, Kelly. I could go on, but that would be my short answer as to what my skills are and sort of how we use that on a day-to-day basis.
Great explanation. Thank you so much, Tessa. Crystal, your title is Diversity and Inclusion Coach. So tell us a little bit about what that means to you.
Well, as far as the skill set, I'll start with that piece because it'll lead into those conversations related to diversity and inclusion when we're working with effective teams. The skill set personally is, for myself, is networking and effective communication. I think a lot of times when we look at those ineffective teams, there's various interpretations and misunderstandings can come around from miscommunications when we're talking about diverse backgrounds and different perspectives and viewpoints. So having those effective communication and networking abilities help to eliminate a lot of those miscommunications and that may come around from diverse groups. So I think that's one of my strengths personally. I try to be a listener, take in others' perspectives, interpret it. If I'm misinterpreting information, ask them questions in relation to, am I interpreting this properly? So, because it's important that we understand that when we're working with diverse teams and groups, that we are looking at perspectives and experiences coming from all different avenues. So what I interpret as one thing may not be the same thing that Kelly or Tessa is interpreting it as. So I feel that since I've been in this role now for 3 years, I've really had to take a step back to listen effectively, process, and ask questions. Because even though I may have listened effectively, my interpretation could still be completely different than what they were trying to communicate with me. So I think the skills, when we're talking about diverse teams, a lot of those challenges come around when those pieces come in, where we have those misinterpretations, miscommunications. And if we want to work towards effective and having those effective teams for diverse groups, we have to understand all those perspectives and experiences in an effective way. So that's my take on the question, Kelly. And I'll pass it back over to you.
Thank you. No, that was great. You brought about some good points of just being a good listener is kind of what comes first, and then asking questions. And that requires doing some self-reflection. And sometimes that makes us uncomfortable. And it's a good place to be, though, because that's where growth is. So it does require a little bit of self-reflection and then following up with any questions to clear up. So communication, it's one of the biggest employability skills. And it covers so many other things other than just communication. It's in every part of everything that you do. So thank you, Crystal. Meghan, your skill set and kind of what diversity, inclusion, and working with diverse teams, what that means to you.
Well, for the purposes of this session, I'm going to focus on soft skills. I think I bring that up at every meeting that we've ever had. Soft skills are extremely important. The way you communicate with people, the way you're listening to people and responding to them, and even simple things such as body language. And to tie in the inclusivity portion, I'm going to use Project Search once again as an example. So once again, Project Search is for Lee County School District students that have cognitive or developmental disabilities. And they come and they intern at the hospital, but it's a selection process, and not anybody can you have to apply to the program, you have to express a desire to work. And one of the things that we do is skills assessment. And that's something for new students coming into the program to see if they are good candidates to participate in the program going forward at the hospital site. So one of those things that we have them do is we have different stations where, they're asked to complete required tasks. Now, this serves a bigger purpose because we're not seeing that we don't necessarily need them to get these tasks right the first time. We want to see how they handle, if they can't or if they can. So once again, focusing on those soft skills and the way you communicate and the way you ask for help and support. So, you know, the whole point is to get these individuals to the point of successful employment. And through that, that first step is to see, you know, how are they interacting with others? You know, what happens if somebody can't do a task? Because honestly, I think we're all these moments are teachable. And, you know, with the right support and training, and, you know, we have fantastically health staff that mentor these individuals. With that support, I think really anything is, you know, you can accomplish anything, you know. And to Neal's point before, he had mentioned something about confidence. You know, something that we see in these individuals isn't necessarily that they've acquired these tasks, which they do and they're amazing at, but it's the confidence level that they now have that's instilled in them that they never had before, because, you know, we have a whole team of people telling them that, you know, you're able to do this and we're going to help you get there. And I think that's a huge, huge point. You know, it's just an amazing program. And, you know, in terms of inclusivity, I love to be part of that. And, you know, as I said, just circling back to the soft skills, it all starts there.
Thank you, Megan. And what a great program. That's amazing. If more employers would have similar programs, it would be a better community to live in. We're moving that way. We're moving that way. Neal, we'll throw it over to you now.
Yeah, I'm going to echo some of what Megan and Crystal said. I've been very fortunate in my career working for global pharmaceutical companies, global consulting firms, very fortunate to have the opportunity to travel all over the world to meet physicians, to meet patients, to meet regulators and so forth. So a diverse team, a diverse group, I've just been brought up throughout my career. So in many ways, this discussion that it's a challenge is foreign to me because it's always been part of my career. The skill, again, the soft skills I want to focus on as well. The hard skill in me, the science, I can sort of understand the science behind all of this drug research, but I don't understand the details. And I'm amazed at the people, the scientists who can get in there and take DNA apart and make all these drugs. I discovered over time that my skill was more of a soft skill, sort of bringing diverse people together, bringing people from different perspectives or different educational backgrounds or professional backgrounds together. And I think how I did that, sort of, again, echoing others, is I listened more and talked less. I'm sort of a natural introvert. I'm sort of a quiet person by nature. So that sort of came naturally to me. I could listen to how a patient, a parent of a sick child, you know, was just crying out for a drug company to move faster, you know, to develop a drug that would be a cure or a treatment for his or her child. At the same time, listening to the drug company saying, look, we have the FDA, we have all these regulatory hurdles and legal hurdles. So trying to bridge that gap in understanding, translating, so to speak, how a drug company might talk to a patient and vice versa, translating how the vocabulary of a patient for my drug company clients. And so just listening, being able to, I think, as Crystal said, take different perspectives, find a common denominator in those different perspectives and work from that common denominator. And again, my skill in doing that, as I discovered over time, was, you know, listening more and talking less, and then really finding that common denominator to build on top of.
Very good points. Very good points. The next couple questions I'm just going to throw out there, and whoever wants to answer it can answer it. I do want to talk, because I know, Neal, you're into the research. When we talk about collaboration and teamwork and trying to use diverse teams to change these systems, how do we measure this? How do we collect data? Because these types of skills are things that you can't see. So it is hard to do the research and to collect the data. So any points to that? Feel free to jump in.
I will ponder that and I'll let somebody else go first if I can.
So I think some of the ways to know if it's working is just like some of the statistics that you mentioned early on, Kelly. I mean, I think what I'm struck by sitting here listening to some of my favorite people in Southwest Florida talk about their career pathways and their thoughts on these skills, is that it really doesn't matter what field you're in, right? It doesn't matter how you got to where you're going. None of that matters. These are the ability to work in teams and the ability to work in diverse teams and groups is critically important to the success of our communities and our businesses and organizations. And so I think when you see an organization doing really well or a company doing really well, it's a sign of the ability to work well in teams and to have diverse teams, diverse people at the table. I think that, from another perspective, you can measure teamwork. We do it for FutureMakers Coalition. We do a partnership health survey that lets our partners express what they really think about working together and where we need to shift and focus. And it's really important to listen to that feedback. FutureMakers does a newsletter every month. I didn't ever really want to do a newsletter. It's a lot of work and I have other things I'm focused on. It just because that's not important from my perspective, or as important from my perspective, when the team says that that's what they need in order to stay up to date on the information, then it's my job to respond to that, because what I think is not the end all be all. Even though I lead this work, I actually step back and let others decide what we're doing, where we're going, what's needed. And then I ask them how it's going, right? So I think you can see it in the overall performance metrics for your organization or your community, but then also you could take it a step further and actually ask people, create the culture and the ability for people to feel comfortable talking honestly about how they feel about being part of the team and what they think could be better. And the best way to do that, the best way to build trust is to be responsive to that and to validate others' lived experience. Because just because you don't feel it, you haven't experienced it that way, does not mean that another person's experience is invalid. And that's what Crystal was talking about earlier, when she was talking about listening and recognizing that the way she hears something may be different from somebody else. And that's because of her different background. And just like mine, I'm not going to probably read a newsletter, but other people find it valuable. And so we do that for the team.
Thank you. And I want to touch on, you said that you can tell if a company is working well with diverse teams, they're going to be successful. So students, if that's something that's really important to you, and it should be, do your research. Do your research into a company. If you are thinking of working somewhere or applying for a specific job, before you go in for an interview, you should have questions ready. And it could include things like, what are your policies on diversity and equity and inclusion? Ask companies those questions, especially if it's important to you.
Maybe just to build on what Tessa said, just again, benefit of hindsight, as I grew in my career, I began overseeing multiple teams, multiple project managers who are managing their own diverse teams and so forth. And what I tried to stress in my groups was, look, the only way my career is going to thrive and the only way I'm going to be successful is if that team is successful. And the only way that team is going to be successful is if I bring my best to that team. And again, some things are difficult to measure. Successful teams, you could tell when they walked out of the room that they had a good meeting. They were chatting, they were smiling, they were meeting deadlines. They were moving the project along and meeting deadlines. If a problem came up, they would work together to solve that problem. Unsuccessful teams, in my experience, had too many people thinking about me. How am I going to succeed? Despite what the team might be doing. When those team meetings broke up, people would walk out very sour-faced and grumbling and so forth, and try to figure out what the corrective action is to get them working together. But it's something that, again, meeting timelines, there are benefits to companies, but there's also just a personal satisfaction, a benefit to you in your career as you engage in a diverse team and work hard to make that team successful, because if that team is successful, then I will be successful.
Very good points. And I think that plays into some a servant leadership heart. So being a servant leader and asking your team for feedback and being vulnerable and allowing them to be honest with how they feel and what they think about the work environment. Very good points. Thank you all. Anything else? All right, we'll move on then. The next question, how were you able to acquire these skills that you need to be able to work in diverse teams? Is this something that was explicitly taught to you? Is this something you had to learn through experiences? So how, for our students, if they want to practice the skill, what's something they could do? How did you learn this skill? And I'll put it out to anybody.
I'll start, Kelly. I think for myself personally, these are skills that I've acquired over the years. I always classify myself as an introverted extrovert. Initially, working with diverse groups, I would rather be the fly on the wall where I kind of stay away from everyone. I didn't necessarily communicate, network with anyone, engage with others in the room. And over the years, I had to kind of step out of my bubble and my shell and acquire those skills to listen, communicate, network with diverse groups and engage on a level where I can communicate effectively from myself to them as well. So it took years for me to get to the point I am now. If you saw me 19 years ago, I would not be that same person. I cannot sit and say I've acquired all those skills automatically right out of college. Public speaking was not my strong point. So acquiring those skills over the years, I think the more I put myself out there with other diverse groups and allowed myself to collaborate, as Tessa was saying, being in those collaborative groups, listening to those perspectives, it allowed me to have a validation of my own voice to where I felt my communication was actually relevant and I could share my perspectives and listen to others' perspectives and be a part of the conversation.
Anyone else want to chime in on that? How did you acquire these skills and what can our students do to practice?
I think very often, again, I sort of separate skills into two buckets, the hard skills and the soft skills. The hard skills, there are students out there who just might be naturally good at math, for example, or science, or some others might be very good at English literature, whatever that discipline might be. The soft skills you do develop over time, I think. The words you choose to use as you communicate with folks, there are going to be times when you choose the wrong words and you're going to feel that backlash, and you sort of learn how to communicate over time. I think most of us fall back on what our personalities naturally sort of gravitate towards. And then you build those skills, quite frankly, in my opinion, by trial and error. You learn to communicate, you learn to write, you learn to listen. And there's times where you're going to do a better job than others. There's times when a certain person needs to be spoken to one way, but another person needs to be spoken to another way. Those are some of the fine tuning of those soft skills that I think you learn over time.
I think, Kelly, one of the things is, and I often say this, is to put yourself in situations that you're uncomfortable with. For the purpose of the diversity and inclusion, I had never worked with the disability community prior to my experience with Project Search. So I really had to educate myself because, I wanted to know what I could say, what I could not say, the proper way of addressing people and situations. And, it's a skill that I acquired later on in life, but for all the students that are young out there, put yourself in those situations and ask questions because you don't know what you don't know. And the more you educate yourself about, the differences between yourself and somebody else, whether it be race, if it's a disability, if you don't know, question, in the proper format, just ask, because as I said, the more you know about how to communicate with another individual that might be different from you, that will help better strengthen that relationship going forward, and vice versa. It's a two-way street.
Very good points. Yeah, I think in professionally or personally, putting yourself in situations where you're uncomfortable is always going to be a learning situation. And it's good to continue learning and to continue acquiring new skills. And sometimes that means you have to be uncomfortable. And also, kind of Neal mentioned it, learning from your mistakes. Make some mistakes and then learn from them. And it might end up helping you in the long run to make that mistake. Anyone else want to jump in on that?
I would just say be open to feedback. Everyone's points were fantastic. It's hard to get feedback. I call it being a critical friend. It's feedback is good. I mean, as long as it's coming from the right place. Usually if someone's giving you feedback, they're doing it to try to help you grow. It can be painful to hear it sometimes, especially around diversity, equity, and inclusion. We all have blind spots because of our lived experience. If we come from a place where we've lived in a certain class, or we don't have a disability, or any number of things, it's hard. You can't always understand what it's like from someone else's experience. And so the ability to hear feedback about the way that you talk to somebody, the words that you use, how something you say makes someone feel is hard. It's a hard skill to learn, but it's really critically important to working in diverse teams. And I would just say that, you learn that over time. You can't give up. So like Crystal described herself, I'm an extroverted extrovert. I learn everything by processing out loud, which gets me in a lot of trouble. So I say things a lot of the time that can be perceived wrong because I'm literally figuring things out by talking. And so over the years, I've had to take a lot of constructive feedback. But I think the one thing I would say about that is that I don't give up. Like if someone gives me feedback, it might hurt and I might not always respond to it the way that I should, like positively, but I do always try to think about it and come back and do better. So not giving up and being open to hard feedback are, I think, critical parts of this work.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Thank you for adding that in. We are getting down to the last couple of minutes, so we'll wrap it up with a final question, and we'll go around and have everybody answer this. If you could go back and talk to your teenage self, what is something that you would tell yourself? What's some advice that you would give yourself in preparation of doing some of this work? So we will start with Meghan.
I guess not be shy, and to my point before, feel comfortable, asking adults or authority, anything that you need to know, just so that you can further your own personal growth going forward. I was very, very quiet, and I still am a huge introvert, but through, questioning and having those uncomfortable conversations sometimes has helped me further grow in my own career.
Thank you. Neal.
Yeah, I think it's have patience, cut yourself some slack. Take that first step, because most likely, almost definitely, the first job you have is not going to be the last job you have. And as Tessa said earlier, it really is a lifelong learning process, whether it's your own personal growth as a person, or just changes in technology, external growth in the industry that you choose, and so forth. So just have patience. And just keep plowing ahead. Follow your heart, follow your head.
Good advice. Crystal.
Oh, my teenage self. My middle school self, I would definitely tell her to be confident in her abilities, because I did not have the most confidence when I was in middle school, and that everything would be okay in the long run. So that's what I would tell my middle school self.
Advice. Tessa.
So two things. One, I would say don't do things just because that's what other people think you should do. So along the lines of following your heart, but also you don't have to do all the things that people think are expected of you in life. So I wish I would have been more firm with myself about that at a younger age. I've done a lot of things because that's what I perceived as normal. And there really is no normal. So then the second piece of that would be to find balance. Life doesn't need to be all about work. It's critically important that you take good self-care in order to be able to be effective in teams. And then also to be present and able to work well with diverse teammates and people. When we're overloaded, when we're trying to multitask, when we're stressed out, when we're tired, we're more prone to expressing implicit bias and saying and doing things that are harmful to teams and to other people. And so practicing self-care is a critical part of being a good employee and a good leader over time.
Very, very good advice from all of our panelists. Thank you. I think to wrap it up, just being open-minded and open to different people and experiences and backgrounds, and using it as a learning experience. When you have conversations with people, go into it thinking, I'm going to learn something new. I'm going to learn something new about this person. And then use that to help you form whatever sort of relationship, whether it is a coworker or a personal friend, and using those experiences to help make that relationship better and stronger. Well, do my teammates, Gina and Brandy, do you have anything to add?
I think as a mom of a teenager and now 20-something children, I think that it's really important to talk to your teachers. So communicating with your teachers and letting them know if you have a concern or a problem and being open to them is very helpful.
Yeah, very good point, Gina. For our students to remember that our teachers are humans too. They have their own backgrounds, their own experiences, families, things that they're dealing with. And for our teachers as well to understand that our students are more than just showing up in the classroom. They have other things going on at home, and just using those relationships to trust each other and be open and honest with your teachers if something is going on. Well, thank you so much to our panelists, Crystal, Meghan, Tessa, and Neal. It was such a pleasure to have you all and to talk about working in diverse teams and helping our students kind of be a little more open to doing some self-reflection and asking questions and making themselves uncomfortable a little bit to make themselves better. Thank you all for being here. And don't forget, students, to check out our YouTube channel. And then we will see you all on, April 6th for our next Career Ed Talks. We'll be focusing on self-management and confidence, which was a point that I heard Crystal mention a lot. And so this could be a really good topic for some of our students. So stay tuned on April 6th. And thank you again to our panelists. Everyone have a great Wednesday.